Fred Storr and Luke Matson, on the midnight to 3 o'clock patrol, passed an uneventful 2 hours on their particular stretch of highway. Matson finally sat down on a fallen tree stump a few yards from the edge of the road. "Legs giving out," he commented wryly, resting his rifle on the stump. "Might as well sit a few minutes." Fred Storr lingered nearby. "Guess so, Luke. Don't look like..." Suddenly, he scowled into the black fringe of the swamp. "You hear something, Luke?" Luke listened, twisting around on the stump. "Well, maybe," he said finally. "Kind of a little scratchy sound like." He got up, retrieving his rifle. "Let's take a look," Fred suggested in a low voice. He stepped over the stump, and Luke followed him toward the tangle of brush which marked the border of the swamp jungle. Several yards further along, they stopped again. The sound became more audible. It was a kind of slithering, scraping sound, such as might be produced by a heavy body dragging itself over uneven ground. "Sounds like a snake," Luke ventured. "A damn big snake." "We'll get a little closer," Fred whispered. "You be ready with that gun when I switch on my light." They moved ahead a few more yards. Then a powerful yellow ray stabbed into the thickets ahead as Fred switched on his flashlight. The ray searched the darkness, probing in one direction and then another. Luke lowered his rifle a little, frowning. "Don't see a thing," he said. "Nothing but a big pool of black scum up ahead there." Before Fred had time to reply, the pool of black scum reared up into horrible life. In one hideous second, it hunched itself into an unspeakable glistening hood and rolled forward with fearful speed. Luke Matson screamed and fired simultaneously as the monstrous scarf of slime shot forward. A moment later, it swayed above him. He fired again, and the thing fell upon him. In avoiding the initial rush of the horror, Fred Storr lost his footing. He fell headlong and turned just in time to witness a sight which slowed the blood in his veins. The monster had pounced upon Luke Matson. Now, as Fred watched, literally paralyzed with horror, it spread itself over and around the form of Luke until he was completely enveloped. The faint writhing of his limbs could still be seen. Then the thing squeezed, swelling into a hood and flattening itself again, and the writhing ceased. As soon as this thing lifted and swung forward in his direction, Fred Storr, goaded by frantic fear, overcame the paralysis of horror which had frozen him. Grabbing the rifle which had fallen beside him, he aimed it at the shape of living slime and started firing. Pure terror possessed him as he saw that the shots were having no effect. The thing lunged toward him, to all visible appearances entirely oblivious to the rifle slugs tearing into its loathsome, viscid mass. Acting out of some instinct which he himself could not have named, Fred Storr dropped the rifle and seized his flashlight, playing its powerful beam directly upon the onrushing horror. The thing stopped, scant feet away, and appeared to hesitate. It slid quickly aside at an angle, but he followed it immediately with the cone of light. It backed up finally and flattened out, as if trying by that means to avoid the light. But he trained the beam on it steadily, sensing with every primitive fiber which he possessed that the yellow shaft of light was the only thing which held off hideous death. Now there were shouts in the nearby darkness, and the other lights began stabbing the shadows. Members of the adjacent patrols, alarmed by the sound of rifle fire, had come running to investigate. Suddenly, the nameless horror squirmed quickly out of the flashlight's beam and rushed away in the darkness.